Time to re-up YouTube. Your boy Mustard is back with another episode of the season preview, and coming in at number 12 we have the Dallas Mavericks. The Mavericks had a pretty eventful offseason on their hands with the loss of Jalen Brunson and the addition of Christian Wood. Some people are high on the Mavericks, some people are low on the Mavericks, but to me I'm pretty in the middle when it comes to this team. Obviously the biggest loss for them was the departure of Jalen Brunson. Now Jalen Brunson is a really good on-ball scorer. He's shifty and crafty at getting to the rim and the paint. Not a great three-point shooter, but not necessarily a bad one either. He can knock them down, but that's not really his game. He likes to break guys down on the perimeter and bully his way to the paint, which is something that was really needed on this team that heavily relied on Luka Doncic for self-creation on the perimeter, and everybody else played off of him. And in the playoffs, the efforts of Jalen Brunson alongside Luka was a huge reason why they were able to make it to the Western Conference Finals. Unfortunately though, their downfall in the Western Conference Finals was their lack of a true big, because they were starting Dwight Powell. That's insane, I ain't gonna lie. And against the Warriors, they were literally allowing layup line after layup line after layup line. So this offseason, despite them losing Brunson, they at least did something to try to fix that by picking up Christian Wood in the trade market. Now C Wood is a really solid big man that's capable of playing the 4 or the 5 position, whatever needed of him. He could space the floor, create for himself a little bit in the post, and put the ball on the floor. On the boards, he's no Dennis Rodman, but he's still very capable on that end of giving you around 10 a night. I would actually consider Christian Wood a real stretch 5. I mean, last year he shot 39% from 3 on nearly 5 attempts, and the year before he also shot 37% on 5 attempts. Even if the defensive scheme from the opposing team is to leave him open, he's proven to make them pay for it. And considering the options for the Dallas Mavericks this offseason when it came to big men, I would say Christian Wood is an upgrade that they desperately needed. Now Christian Wood is not perfect. Defensively, he showed a lack of effort in Houston pretty often. Now a majority of that you could attribute to the fact that he was on a bad team. Now me personally, I look at it and I'm just like, yeah, you're not a real 5. C Wood played the 5 last year and the year before out of necessity, not out of his actual skill set. I don't believe he's as bad of a defender as it seems. He just has to always protect the rim for Houston at the 5 position, which he shouldn't be doing. C Wood throughout his entire career before then was playing the power forward position, and if you look at his frame, it makes sense. The guy weighs about 215 pounds at 6'10". He could play the 5 out of necessity, but that should never be the long-term goal for a team. And I think on this Mavericks team defensively, they are probably going to get better just by having size there, but it's not going to be the drastic improvement that many people probably think. And considering that Jason Kidd has already come out and said that Christian Wood is going to be coming off of the bench, it's fairly obvious what Jason Kidd thinks of Christian Wood's defense, because it isn't his offense why he's benching him, it's the defense. And considering that Jason Kidd showed up and showed out as a defensive-minded head coach last year, I don't believe he's going to let this team's defense fall below the top 10 or 15. Now unfortunately though, it's going to be pretty difficult for him to do that with some of these point of attacks on the roster not being that good. For starters, Tim Hardaway Jr. is a solid 3-point shooter, even though he's fairly inconsistent, but when he's hot, he's very hot. We saw that against the Clippers 2 years ago in the playoffs. Unfortunately though, that's really all he provides. He's not some great shot creator, he isn't a good defender, and considering that he's coming off of a injury-riddled year at the age of 30 now, it's pretty safe to say that a decline is more than likely on the way sooner rather than later. Then you have Spencer Dinwiddie, who showed up and showed out for them in the postseason and in the games that he played post-trade. He's a good ball handler, nice passer, can attack the rim. The only problem is his lack of consistency when it comes to his efficiency. Dinwiddie likes to take a lot of tough shots, and in the playoffs last year he was making a lot of them, especially from behind the arc. But the problem with Dinwiddie is that it's very hard for me to back him as a consistent starter in this league. He shows the flashes of greatness at times, but unfortunately it's just not consistent. Whether he was in Brooklyn or in Washington or now in Dallas, he's been somewhat of the same exact player when it comes to his consistency, and now this upcoming season they're having these high expectations for him to be the 3rd option on this team that has championship aspirations. And unfortunately, I just don't know about Spencer Dinwiddie in that role. I think he's a good 6th man and somebody off the bench, but I don't know if he can be your full-time starter. But I will say last year he was the 3rd option and they went to the Western Conference Finals. This year he's the 3rd option behind Christian Wood and Luka Doncic, and I think pairing him with somebody like a C Wood that can give him the spacing to operate, run some pick and rolls with, play off of of Luka Doncic as well. It's the best possible situation to maximize his potential on the offensive end. Now defensively, Dinwiddie isn't very good. I'm not even gonna lie to you. I don't think he's a liability. If anything, he could be neutral, but that's pretty wishful thinking if I'm being honest. But thankfully, they do have two wings that are capable of contributing offensively and defensively in Dorian Finney-Smith and Reggie Bullock. Bullock is a pretty streaky shooter. He reminds me of Danny Green in a way. Even though he may miss some shots, you're not gonna leave him open, so he's still gonna provide some spacing. And defensively, he's never gonna cheat you with effort. He's a very good perimeter defender that can defend the opposing guards. Dorian Finney-Smith, the same thing applies. Even though he doesn't really provide crazy spacing, he can knock down the shots, but he's usually left open if I'm being quite honest. And defensively, he's easily the best defender on this team. Like without him, I don't think they're a good defensive team at all. And speaking of not a good defensive team at all, let's look at the rest of that supporting cast. Dwight Powell, a nice little rotation bench player, but it looks like he's gonna still be the starter of this team because they don't want to start Christian Wood. The same thing applies to Maxi Kleber. Even though Kleber can give them some offensive contributions with floor spacing at the 4 or 5 position, I still do believe that having a starting lineup with Kleber or Dwight Powell at the 5 is still pretty flawed, and the same thing applies to JaVale McGee. They picked up JaVale McGee this offseason, and even though McGee does provide a level of size and protection in the paint, he's still not somebody that should be starting at the 5. He's a foul machine that makes some of the dumbest mistakes on both sides of the ball, if I'm being quite honest. There's a reason he's been bouncing from team to team to team throughout his entire career essentially. Now some of you guys may have heard this video up until this point and said, yo Mustard, you've been dogging on the Mavs a little bit too much to have them at number 12. Why do you have them so high? Well, it's because of one man, and y'all know the deal. His name is Luka Doncic. Luka truly is him. You could argue that he is the best floor raiser in the NBA, and I think that next year he's gonna put that on full display. This is a guy that is one of the greatest playmakers already of all time. This is a guy that attracts so much attention on the perimeter that it is insane, and when you double him, it really is no point. He can pass out of any type of situation, a great pick and roll ball handler, effective in the transition game, can score on all 3 levels, good mid-range shooter, good at getting to the basket and applying rim pressure, good at getting to the free throw line. He just needs to knock them down a little bit more consistently, Luka. I need to see that next year. And on top of that, he can shoot perimeter shots off the dribble, off the catch, whatever way you want it. Luka is truly one of the greatest offensive players that we have ever seen at the position. And I firmly believe you can make a sound argument for him to be a top 5 player, not just offensive player, but player in the league today. I think when you put him around just decent pieces, and he definitely has some decent pieces in Dallas, that whatever they are lacking in the regular season, he's definitely going to do his best to make up for it. I'm not saying he's gonna go Rudy Gobert and turn this team into the greatest defense of all time. I'm not saying he's gonna pull a Hakeem Olajuwon and lead them to the finals or win a championship, but I do believe he's gonna have a stellar individual regular season, lifting this team higher than expectations. Some people are actually believing Christian Wood made them worse, and I don't blame people for thinking that, but did you forget that Luka Doncic is on this team and is primed and ready for an MVP season sooner rather than later? I'm not trying to meat ride, but Luka really is that dude. I don't think they're gonna win a championship, and there's a good chance they might actually lose in the first round this year. But knowing what Luka Doncic is capable of with the roster that he has at his disposal, I definitely do believe they are going to overachieve. The ceiling is not too high for the Dallas Mavericks, but I do believe Luka is gonna increase their floor. But you guys let me know what y'all think in the comment section about the future of the Dallas Mavericks this upcoming season. Make sure you drop a like, subscribe to the channel, and press that bell for post notifications. This is your boy Young Mustard signing out. Y'all stay safe and have a blessed day. Peace.